Upadesha Sara was written by Bhagwan Ramanama Rishi. Ramanama Rishi was born in 1879 in Tamil Nadu. His father was a lawyer who died when Ramanama Rishi was very young. And as a child, he was a very reflection-oriented individual. He always reflected, he always thought, very much like our Swami Chinmayananda. When his family would make Swamiji do prayers, he would always be doing Upasana of Lord Shiva, trying to bring Lord Shiva's image into his mind. Ramana Maharshi was like that too, very reflection-oriented. He was thinking about life. And as I mentioned in the opening, he had this longing to go to Arunachala. Arunachala is a mountain that symbolizes a Shivlinga. It's a form of Lord Shiva. And he had this deep longing. He would dream about it, he would think about it, he would feel it. This Arunachala was calling him. He wanted to go, he was just a little boy. What to do? And then, in 1895, one of his relatives told him where Arunachala was. So, that was like a glorious revelation. Now he knows where to go. And so in 1896, what he did was he took 3 rupees from his brother's tuition fees. And he set off to go to Arunachala. And he left a note for his family not to come looking for him. But when he got to the train station, that wasn't enough money to get a train ticket. So he took his earrings and he pawned them off. And finally he gets to Arunachala and he sees the mountain, he sees the temple. And like I said, he takes that money and he turns around and he throws it into the lake across from Arunachala. That pond. They usually have a pond across from from temples traditionally. And he says, I surrender. I am here. And he never left that place then. Again, I talk about belief. Imagine the belief this little boy had. And this was, again, this is not back in the day we can say, okay, it's in Srimad Bhagavatam time or Ramayana. There's proper years documented here. This happened in the modern times. And so he stayed there. He lived there. And for those who have been in Indian temples, after they're finished with the flowers and coconuts and offerings, they put it into one corner. And so what Ramana Maharshi was doing, he was sitting there in that corner where they would put all of that. And so he was lost in that, and they kept on putting more flowers and more coconuts and more offerings. And then one day someone saw him, covered in bugs. Because he was so deep into himself, into his reflection on the Lord. They found him literally covered in insects. In that corner where all of these organic materials are decaying. And in 1950 then, he attained Mahasamadhi. He was a saint of a different caliber altogether. I'll give you an example of what kind of saint he was. During the freedom fight in India, back in the day, all of these great freedom fighters came to Ramana Maharshi and said, Bhagwan, Guru, what are you doing for this freedom fight, freedom struggle? What can you do for us? And he looks at them and says, what freedom fight? What struggle? His mind is reveling on that Advaita Vedanta theory, concept, that there is only oneness. Nobody's fighting, no one's being saved, no one's dying. Everyone is just being. That was his vision. How when he opened his eyes, what he saw in the world. Just divinity. Many considered Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi to be an incarnation of Kartikeya, of Lord Kartikeya. And so that's why this adjective Bhagavan is used. And he taught hundreds of people directly. He's taught thousands of people through his ashram. By show of hands, has anyone been to Ramana Ashram? No? It is a beautiful place where peacocks dance freely. When you go there, as soon as you go there, you'll see many peacocks just dancing around. And they have these caves where Bhagavan lived there for 17 years. In a cave. And when I say cave, like, imagine the height of this podium. Like, you have to crouch down just to get in there. And it's so hot in there, too. I spent a few days there after the Vedanta course. Me and a friend of mine had visited him, so I said, let's go to Ramana Ashram. And that was a big shock to him, being an Italian Jewish person who was just coming from Canada, and going to Ramana Ashram, sitting on the floor and eating and staying in a cave. But imagine, he spent 17 years there. It's a beautiful place, and if you ever get a chance, please go to Ramana Ashram. And you're supposed to walk around Arunachala, bare feet, and you're supposed to be silent while you do it. We can walk around this ashram, silent, and pretend that's Arunachala. It is Arunachala. There's Lord Shiva right there. That was the caliber of this saint, and he's taught millions through his texts. Upadesha Sara is his most popular offering. And this is the second text that we studied in the Vedanta course. And in most Vedanta courses, this is the second text that is taught. The first one being Tattva Bodha. So, we're essentially bringing the Vedanta course to, what's the address here? Something Kingery? I don't know. That's where we're bringing. Whatever the address is, that's where we're bringing Vedanta course. This is a brief history of Ramana Maharshi. Now I'll give you a history of Upadesha Sara. You and I tend to think that actions are the way to bring peace into our lives, that actions are supreme. This is what we tend to think. And for those who have watched Peaceful Warrior, this is exactly what Dan says to his guru. If I do this, I will get what I want, when I want, how I want. Dan was under the impression that he can act and get that happiness. Action will bring him happiness. And so there was another poet, his name was Sri Murugnara, who was writing a poem about the way we think. About this idea of how we think action is supreme. So he's writing this poem, and this poem goes like this. There's a group of Brahmins who are doing rituals. Swaha, swaha, they're offering, there's a fire. And they're under the belief that they're superior to all of us. That they will get happiness through this ritual. And during this time, there's another divinity, Lord Shiva, who disguises himself as a boy, as a young Brahmin boy. And he asks those Brahmins for bhiksha, for food. And those Brahmins are focusing on what they're doing, they're ignoring this Brahmin boy who truly is Lord Shiva. And so he goes to the wives of all of those Brahmins. And those wives were delighted to be able to serve this young, handsome, vibrant boy. And so then this boy left and all the women followed him because they were so devoted to who he was. And at that time, all of these Brahmins started realizing that all of their wives were gone. And so they started following their wives and following this Brahmin boy. And they were going to want to hurt him, right? Because he stole their wives. And so they started arguing with them. They started, chanting mantras, etc., etc. And through all this, they realized that their efforts were impotent. And at that point, they realized that it is Lord Shiva who has taken disguise as this Brahmin boy to teach these Brahmins that actions are not supreme. And at this point, Sri Murugnara wanted to convey through this poem the knowledge that Lord Shiva gave, but he felt incapable of doing it. So he approached Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi to write about this knowledge. And that's why Upadesha Sara came out. This is what Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi projected what Lord Shiva said to these Brahmins. And I hope I haven't confused everyone in this story. That's why you're given a copy of the book. Please read it. And Swami Tejamananda has written the commentary, so it's very, very simple. In the next 5 days, we will study Upadesha Sara. Now, we're going to break Upadesha Sara. We're going to not break, not divide. We will classify Upadesha Sara into 2 parts. Swamiji will take the Karma Yoga aspect of Upadesha Sara. And so your morning lecture will be by Swamiji right after breakfast. Just focusing on Karma Yoga. And then I will take the other discourses and I will focus on the Jnana Yoga part of it. So Swamiji will do Karma Yoga, I will do Jnana Yoga.